the Australian Labor Party. I resigned before they got the opportunity to do so. Now, it is good to be here. I think it's all good to visit the more remote parts of Australia whenever you can. So I'm happy to be here to talk to you today. Now, my wife has said to me in the past, look, you're wasting your time. You go to these meetings and you're just talking to old people. You've got to go to young people. So I'm very pleased to see that I'm older than most of you here today. So we are making progress. Now, one of the reasons I keep asking myself, other people ask me, why do you do this? Why do you keep trying to campaign? And the reason is quite simple, and it's self-serving. I am terrified of dying, and at my age that's on the cards at any time, and leaving this country, a worse country than my parents left me. And I feel if I died tomorrow, exactly what I would do. And it's giving you some examples of this. Multiculturalism has been a blight on Australia. I got a friend, a very good friend, who died. He was a Slav. And he said to me, I used to be a New Australian. He said, I kind of like that. He said, no, I'm just an ethnic. See, when we had that policy of assimilation, people were encouraged to be Australian. We changed the policy and we now say, no, don't you become Australian. You remain a lovely ethnic and we'll fund you to maintain your culture. Now, I've got no problem with people retaining their culture, but I don't want to pay them to do it. If their culture, aspects of their culture that are so valuable, then they will survive. But I don't see why we have to do it. No, before we got the... now, Izzy Leibler, who was one of the great architects of multiculturalism, he was the head of the Jewish situation in Australia, Australian Council of World Jewry. He then got promoted and went to Israel, where he became the head of the World Council of Jewry, not just Australian head. And he was in the Israeli press some 2 years ago now, saying that multiculturalism was an absolute blight and had to be stamped out because it was turning Israel into a nation of tribes. It was destroying Israel and making it indefensible. This was his view as head of the World Council of Jewry. Now, I thought that was fairly newsworthy, and I got it sent to me by friends, and I have in Israel. So I forwarded to most of the papers in Australia. The Melbourne Age was the only paper that ran it once. But Izzy Leibler knew that that was the result of multiculturalism when he was in Australia. But he wanted to do it in Australia. That was his intention. But he didn't want it to happen in Israel. Now, the highest level of support for multiculturalism occurred in this country in the late 70s, when support for multiculturalism got up to 25%. That is still, in my calculations, not a majority. But it didn't matter, because both political parties were invested with it. And so it didn't matter which way you voted, you still got multiculturalism. Now, the politicians knew it wasn't popular, but they were confident enough to ram it down our throats because they knew what was best for us. Now, we are now reaping the benefits of that. There are many examples. Malcolm Fraser, we now know, against all the advice, let in Lebanese Muslims into Australia. He was told it would cause trouble, that it would not assimilate, but he did it anyway. Malcolm Fraser was one of our great national disasters. And I find it frightening that you're seeing the papers starting to rehabilitate him as a statesman. The man is far from that. A man that can't keep control of his own trousers, in my view.